back to the podcast, You Will Not Pod, from the Random Goodness Network. My name is Avery, I'm your host. So, as you probably noticed, it's been 2 weeks again since the last podcast. Not only that, but I'm also running late putting the podcast up. Um, if you've been following our Twitter, you probably noticed we put out an announcement. Just thought I'd repeat it. So, just because of life. I'm going to be switching the podcast to being on a bi-weekly format. So every 2 weeks, I'll put out an episode, drop it on Friday. But that way, I get more time to really work on a good product for you guys, and you can just enjoy it. So that's what's going on. The weekly format ended up being a little too rough on me, since I'm doing it by myself. So I decided to see if I can do it for every 2 weeks instead. For at the moment, at least. Hopefully, at some point, we'll be able to move it back to a weekly basis. But for right now, we'll just work on it like this. And just as a reminder, if you haven't been listening, I've actually been guest hosting on the podcast in the Random Goodness Network. The old Pods and the New, where we're talking about the Game of Thrones rewatch. So if you want to hear my lovely voice some more, you can come stop by and listen to me on that. But anyway, let's talk about anime, shall we? It's funny because we actually haven't really talked about anime since, the Monday of my last podcast, since I dropped 3 episodes in 1 week. And for this one, so remember, we're going to go back for this one. We're going to go back into our archives. And this one is going to be a bit more interesting, because not only am I doing more of a throwback here, but I'm also going to be doing more of a two-parter. And you'll see why, because the show that we're going to talk about for this episode is Steins Gate. Yes, we're talking about Steins Gate. And the reason this is going to be a two-parter is because there is a current anime that's actually running right now, Steins Gate 0, which takes place technically on a different... So, alright, we'll get into it a little bit more, but it's a sequel to the original Steins Gate anime, and based on the visual novel that Steins Gate was based on, a sequel to the visual novel that Steins Gate was based on. It's an adaptation of that visual novel. Anyway, let's get a little bit into Steins Gate. For example, what the fuck is it? You'll probably notice it if you read the notes. If you don't, please read the notes, because I try to be witty. That Steins Gate's written very strangely. It's literally written Steins, and then there's a semicolon, and then it's gate. If you've ever seen another show or another video game that has a semicolon, just straight in the middle like that without a break, you probably already know the series. So this is part of a series of visual novels from, I think it's 5PB and Nitro Plus who publish it. And it's called the Science Adventure series. And basically, the head writers looked at it and thought, they looked at the visual novels and they wanted to be a little more realistic. And so they came up with this Science Adventure series. So, for example, Chaos Head, Chaos Child, Robotics Notes, all of those are part of the Science Adventure series, along with Steins Gate. It was, I think, the proper release order was Chaos Head, Steins Gate, Chaos Child, Robotics Notes. And then there's also a bunch of other spin-offs in the series based on those 3 or 4 main entries. So, and it's interesting because each of them are sci-fi games that use real scientific concepts. For example, Chaos Head and Chaos Child focus on the ability and power to alter reality, but not only that, it really goes into perception. What perception is, how for another thing is robotics notes, which focuses on, you guessed it, robots. Um, so and then all right. So it crosses a little bit over into regular old science because it's a science adventure series, but it's also still fiction. I mean, it's not like you see people wandering around with the ability to affect and alter reality very often. I mean, would we be even able to tell? I think that's a philosophical question we can't even answer right now. But it's 4 a.m. I don't think it's time to get into that. But so it goes into fictional territory with not some non-accurate science, but it still uses real concepts and theory in trying to explain all of it, and it builds a pretty good basis, and it really feels more realistic as such. Um, and what's interesting about all of them is that they all actually take place in the same universe, strangely enough. Um, so, like I said, it's based on a visual novel. So, what is it? So, I already mentioned Chaos Head and Chaos Child are focused on reality. Robotics Notes are focused on robotics. What is Steins Gate? Steins Gate is focused on time travel. Yeah, kind of. I mean, it is. But it's so much more. Because, of course, it is. What it really goes into is the first iterations of the time machine and what effect that will have on reality as a whole. So, just to give you an idea, in the first episode, you've got the main characters. So there's several characters. There's Okabe Rintaro, who is the main character, Okabe. And he is a self-proclaimed mad scientist. And so he goes around, he's got this whole persona that he puts on of being this larger-than-life, just maniacal mad scientist. And he is just fantastic. And you've got Mayuri, who is his childhood best friend, who follows him around everywhere. You've got Daru, who is his hacker, who works in the lab with him, which the lab is basically just an apartment they rent above a television shop. And then they meet. So then there's also Makise Kurisu. And so those are the main characters for right now. We're gonna go a little bit more into some of the characters later on, because there's plenty of characters. But for right now, let's focus on those because those are who you were introduced to in the first episode. So he's working. So in the first episode, Okabe is working on a microwave that's powered by a cell phone. Because why the fuck not? I mean, it's shown that one of his other experiments, one of his other inventions, is a television remote that's also a toy plasma gun. So obviously he's all about recycling, I guess. I don't know. Recycling is the mother of invention, I guess. So he ends up going to a conference based on time travel as a scientific theory. At this conference, this Kurisu Makise shows up, acts a little weird towards Okabe, and then she dies. He finds her completely brutally murdered. And so he's freaking out because she was just talking to him. And then she had left, and then she shows up dead. So he's freaking out. He sends a text to Daru saying, "Oh my gosh, this girl is dead. I can't believe she's dead. Whatever." And then the world line shifts. And you don't know that's what happened at first, but then you realize, because what ends up happening is he sends the text message to the microwave itself. And because of that, it sends the text message back in time to before it was even sent. And because of that, the murder never happens. So he completely changes the fabric of reality, changes time itself in order to save Makise. And with that, he ends up... So Makise is now alive. So what follows is a really fascinating anime. I mean, literally, that's just the first episode. You've got people dying already. You've got time travel already. And what follows is... it's a question. What would you do if you could send text to the past? How would you... if you could just send a text message to yourself a certain number of years in the past, or to someone else, what would you do? How would you send it in order to change what you want to be changed? So they do that for the first half of the season. A lot of critics complain that the first half of the season is really slow, but I think it's really great because it builds up all of the characters and it shows them as who they are because of how they change reality, because of what they do in order to make their lives just a little bit better. But then, about halfway through the season, something changes. There's a massive twist, which, of course, I'm not going to get into. But something bad happens, and they realize that they have to undo everything that they've done. Okabe realizes he has to undo everything they've done. So, because the entire idea is he has to find the timeline in which everyone lives. If every time they send a text message to the past, they diverge onto a new timeline. Because they're diverging onto a new timeline, each one has a different ending. So what he has to do is he has to find that one timeline in which everyone lives. That's what he's trying to do. And that is Steins Gate. The timeline in which everyone lives is Steins Gate. And that is what the show is based on. So it's heartbreaking at times. It's beautiful. The animation's actually pretty damn good. It, of course, suffers a little bit sometimes, but for a show, it's really great. And what's most fascinating about it is actually the dub is fantastic. And I know I don't really get into the sub versus dub deal because a lot of times it is personal preference. It is really what you hear first. And a lot of people find that, some voices are better, more appealing to hear, or perhaps you like the Japanese because you don't understand what they're saying. You can just really listen to intonation. But Steins Gate has possibly does have one of the best adaptations of an anime from Japanese into English. To the point where there's actually a scene, I believe, in the second episode. In the original Japanese, it's a JoJo reference. But this was done, this was done in 2015, 2014? Something like that. This is when it came out. Maybe even earlier. And that was before JoJo started making it big over in the States. It's really big over in Japan, so of course that was the joke. But how do you translate that? because American audiences don't really know JoJo, so they make it into a Doctor Who reference instead. And it's just small things like that that really make it work. I mean, the actual performances by the voice actors themselves is just spot on. I mean, I've never seen a serious dub that does it as well as this. The only reason why I said possibly, or why I said it was only one of the best dubs, is because, as we'll talk about probably later on in the season for the podcast, the best dub is actually Ghost Stories, and it's very important that you watch it. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. That's probably several episodes down the line, and also probably several drinks along the line, because you can't really talk about Ghost Story sober. But anyway, it has such an amazing cast. Everyone is voiced so well, that it's really, really great to hear. And it actually makes me really upset because Funimation was the one who did the dub, and they actually took it down from everywhere, so from Hulu, from Crunchyroll, because they wanted this exclusive rights to run the dub on their website. So literally, the only place that you can find the dub is on the website for Funimation, which kind of sucks because it's just a great dub, and I feel like if they put it out there as more than that, as on more websites, it might get more attention. Maybe people would listen to dubs more often, but it's definitely worth the watch. This is a time when I will recommend that you watch the dub instead of the sub, because they work really hard on actually making sure that it's a great, faithful translation of the original, and the voice actors really just go with it. J. Michael Tatum plays Okabe in the show, and he gets the intonations and reflections of Okabe being a mad scientist so perfect and on point. It's hysterical. It's awesome to watch. And yet he still does the whole idea between Okabe being serious and the Okabe being a complete joke himself. He manages to juggle those two and still do an amazing job. And I think that even just for that, people should watch it. But everyone else in the show is fantastic. Makise is also fantastic. All of them are really great at the anime, at the dub. So I actually give a recommendation to watch the dub if you can. But before we even get into that, why in the world should I watch it? That's the question. It offers an interesting perspective on time travel. It focuses a lot on the ripple effects of even just smallest changes. What would happen if, you ate turkey instead of tuna salad that one day you got food poisoning? What would be the ripple effects from there? How could you change your own life? And that's the other thing that's really fascinating is, how would you change your own life if you could only send a single text message back in the past? What would you say? How could you? I mean, would you just give yourself some numbers? Would you just give yourself some horses that are about to win at the Derby, or would you do something a little more meaningful? And I think that's just a really fascinating concept to watch, and then watching it be taken away, because Okabe has to go through and undo everything, and it's heartbreaking to watch because these characters are much happier, but it's all about the bonds between them all and how much they all really love each other and how they'll sacrifice it for everyone's sustained happiness. And it's just amazing. All of the characters play off of each other so well. As I mentioned, the dub voice acting, all of them are great with each other. Another thing that's interesting, though, is it also explores how time travel itself would affect reality. So, for example, the series posits that World War III actually occurs just because of the invention of time travel. Um, so it really goes into time travel itself, what it could be used for. CERN is involved, although it's CERN with an S instead of a C, so they wouldn't probably get sued. And that, I mean, it's probably one of the more serious plot lines. It probably is the most serious plot line involving CERN. But knowing that it's supposed to be CERN, the Swiss laboratory, is also hysterical when you're watching it. That's all I'm going to say, but it's hysterical. Now, let's say you want to watch the anime, but maybe you want to read the visual novel first. First of all, good choice. It's a fantastic visual novel. What's most fascinating about the visual novel itself is that each of the science adventure series titles do something a little different than most visual novels. So if you've ever played a visual novel, it's, anime characters talking to you. You have to make a choice. That choice will end up having consequences down the line. And as a result, you'll end up with one of a few different endings, or in most cases, you'll end up with one of several girls. And you really get to explore from there. And what is fascinating about Steins as a visual novel is that instead of making these choices, these just hardline choices, will you go in and save her, or are you gonna just stand back and watch because you're afraid? Instead of doing that, it actually makes the choices are made through your phone on the computer, not your actual phone. That would be a little creepy. Although you can actually get it as an iOS game now, which I found fascinating. But no, you make the choices by deciding how you're going to answer to certain text messages that you receive, for example. So let's say one of your best friends texts you about something. How are you going to answer it? Or are you going to answer it at all? Maybe someone pisses you off and you don't want to answer them. That also has consequences. And, for example, one of my favorite things is you may end up in a situation where you're talking to someone and your phone rings, and it's one of the other important people in the plot. So now you have to decide which one of them you have to choose. Are you going to pick up the phone and answer it because you need to see what's going on, and risk your friendship with the person that you're talking to, or are you going to ignore the call and pursue your friendship with the person that you're actually speaking to in person? So it really relies a lot on more conventional choices, more choices that we make in our daily basis, and not just do I press the button, do I not press the button, that are more random. So it's one of the reasons why I really enjoy it. And both Steins Gate and Steins Gate Zero are currently on sale on Steam, I think, for a couple of more days at least. So if you want to play it, I highly recommend it. So one of the other things I really enjoy about Steins Gate is when it comes to time travel, a lot of shows and a lot of movies don't do a very good job because they don't establish rules. And I mean, this could mean a lot of different things. Because there's several working hypotheses about time travel, or several working theories and archetypes in time travel. There's fixed point theory, which you see a lot in shows like Doctor Who. Actually, I'm pretty sure this is exactly the conversation that happens in the second episode that references Doctor Who. I'm not entirely sure about that, though. I might be wrong. It's been a while since I last watched the show. So there's a theory called fixed point theory, where, for example, you can't go back and just kill Hitler. You just can't. Hitler dies because he shot himself in a bunker. That's a fixed point in time. What decides these fixed points in time, I don't know. But they are fixed points in time. For example, also, November 23rd, 1973, or 11/23/2263, by Stephen King, the book and also Hulu show. It works by the fact that time travel works by the fact that it doesn't actually have any rules, except for time itself. Time itself tries to stop you. It is referred to often in the show, I believe, in the book, as immutable, and it will try to stop you from changing time. So it's stuff like that. Like, every show has a different set of rules, and it's all about how it adheres to the rules that really decide the show for you, I feel. Even if you're not really paying attention, but, for example, if a show says in episode 2 you can't do this, but in episode 10 suddenly they're doing it without any explanation, it's a little jarring. What's interesting about Steins Gate is that it doesn't offer rules. It doesn't offer any rules. You watch it, and you get several episodes in, and it doesn't matter. You can change time however much you want. And then the ripple effects start happening. And you start to see what time will do in order to fix itself. And because of that, the entire rest of the plot kicks in, because time wants to fix itself. And it's a really fascinating look on time travel itself. So, with that, yeah, I mean, the rules really come to bite them in the ass around episode 13. And I'm sure people who have watched the show know exactly what I'm talking about when I reference episode 13. Because it is an unforgettable episode. Let's put it like that. So, with that, alright, so with that, we're actually going to just call it a night. It's a very short episode today. I'm sorry. I'll try to make it up for you in the next episode, in which we'll talk about Steins Gate Zero and how it really plays with a lot of the things that were introduced in Steins Gate. Part of the reason why this episode kind of ends early is because there are certain things that I want to bring up while talking about Steins Gate Zero some more. And there's also certain things that I want to look into a little bit more. I feel like when you watch Steins Gate, it's a lot. It's a lot. It's also, strangely enough, just as a side note, it's a great anime if you just want to try to get someone into watching something. It very much breaks the mold, and it doesn't fill a lot of the anime stereotypes, and even when it does, it tries to break the mold a little bit and poke fun of itself. And I think that's one of the great things about Okabe himself, is that he is a typical protagonist stereotype parody. And watching this parody, and he does it for fun. It's clear he does it for fun, because when shit gets going, it's fascinating watching him change. So, honestly, even if, let's say, your friend who really loved Timeless, by the way, save Timeless, give us the movie, wants another time travel TV show to watch, recommend them Steins Gate. It's actually really fantastic, and it really gets a little bit into science and even some fake science to really explain it, but that's okay, because, I don't know science. Maybe don't recommend it to your quantum physicist friends. if they're sticklers for the science, or anyone who's really studying time travel, I guess. I mean, they might enjoy it. I don't know. But it's great. It's a really great show. It's really fun. And it is definitely something that you'll walk away thinking about for a while. I mean, you gotta figure, this show came out in 2015 or something. It's now 2018, and we've got several spin-offs. We've got a sequel that's based on one of the endings from the visual novel. And you've got so much more. Now, here's the thing. If you're going to listen to next week, the next episode, you might want to be a bit careful, because there will be spoilers. There's going to be a lot of spoilers for Steins Gate because of the fact that it takes place after one of the endings. And it actually plays, because it's time travel, it plays into the main ending for Steins Gate, which is the one that they actually use in the anime. So there are spoilers. There's going to be spoilers. So, if you're fine with that, go ahead. Come in, listen for a little bit. That's when I'm talking about Zero, I'll probably spend a little bit more time talking more on the critique and theory of Steins Gate itself as a series. Just because it is late, and I don't feel like I can do as good of a job as I should have. So, I'm just going to stop it here, and then we'll talk about it all in our next episode. Then, we can talk about a lot of it. We can talk about Zero, and we can talk about everything that happened throughout the course of the Steins Gate series. So, with that, thank you for listening, and I hope you guys come back so we can talk more about Steins Gate. Just as a reminder, if you want to find me on Twitter, my name is LivingXParadox, LivingXParadox. If you want to watch me on Twitch, my name on there is Halcyon Dream. It is HalcyonDreams. Alright, so thank you again for listening, and we'll see you again next week. Have a good one, and just keep watching anime.